Everyone recommends Sleeping Dogs, but did it come out fighting right out of the box when it released? Because at that release window, that can make or break a game right at the very beginning. Because Sleeping Dogs didn't fail in the way people usually think a game fails. It wasn't rejected, it was not broken, and it wasn't even ignored. Instead, it slowly turned into something much stranger. A game people only seemed to fully appreciate after its future had already disappeared. And the strange thing is, Sleeping Dogs almost never existed in the first place. Before it had this name, the project was initially being developed as True Crime Hong Kong, a continuation of the True Crime series that included games like True Crime Streets of LA and True Crime New York City. The project was being published by Activision. But in 2011, Activision made a surprising decision. They cancelled the game entirely. Their reasoning was blunt. Activision believed the project simply wouldn't be able to compete with the biggest open-world games in the industry. In fact, the company's leadership said that their most optimistic projections suggest the game wouldn't reach the top of the genre, and that continuing development wouldn't be worth the investment. For most projects, that kind of decision is the end of the story. But in this case, something unusual happened. Another publisher stepped in. That publisher was Square Enix, or Square Enix, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, who acquired the cancelled project and gave the developers at United Front Games the chance to finish it. The True Crime name was dropped and the project was renamed Sleeping Dogs. And a game that had already been cancelled once suddenly had a second life, which makes its legacy even stranger, because the game people now call underrated was already a comeback story before it even released. When Sleeping Dogs finally released in 2012, it entered one of the most competitive genres in gaming, the open world crime game. But it didn't arrive with overwhelming hype. There wasn't a massive marketing push. It simply appeared, quietly confident in what it was trying to do, and in a genre dominated by huge franchises, quiet launches rarely get the spotlight. If you enjoy videos exploring how games are remembered years after release, consider subscribing, because some of the most interesting gaming stories aren't about the biggest successes, they're about the games that almost became something bigger. When critics first got their hands on Sleeping Dogs, the reaction was generally positive, not explosive praise, but consistent respect. Reviewers highlighted the Hong Kong setting, the atmosphere, and the overall personality of the experience. It didn't feel like a clone of other open-world games. It had its own identity. Naturally, you were going to compare these type of games to GTA, but it was something different, I guess. Part of that identity came from how seriously the developers treated the setting. During development, the team actually consulted Hong Kong police officers and police connected to triad organizations to better understand the world they were recreating. That research shaped the tone of the city and the criminal underworld portrayed in the game. And interestingly, when the game released, even a former triad-associated figure commented publicly that the level of violence depicted wasn't as exaggerated as some people might assume, which says a lot about how closely the developers tried to mirror the darker side of that world. And the real transformation for Sleeping Dogs came after release, because the longer the game existed, the more people started recommending it. Players who discovered it later often said the same thing: I didn't expect it to be this good. That kind of reaction is powerful, because the word of mouth spreads in a completely different way than marketing. And over time, Sleeping Dogs slowly developed the reputation of a game people were glad they eventually discovered. Even if they discovered it late, I guess. And that's where the strange part of the story begins, because by the time that reputation was forming, the moment that could have secured the game's future had already passed. In the games industry, timing matters almost as much as quality. A game can be respected, a game can be loved, but if that appreciation doesn't happen quickly enough, the industry moves on, and Sleeping Dogs found itself caught in that exact situation. Eventually, the studio behind the game, United Front Games, closed its doors. And while that closure wasn't caused by Sleeping Dogs itself, it quietly ended the most obvious path forward for the series, because once the people who built a game are gone, the chances of that world continuing become much smaller. Interestingly, the story almost continued in another form. For years, there were plans to turn Sleeping Dogs into a movie. A film adaptation was announced with martial arts star Donnie Yen, the guy from the Ip Man movies. His name was attached to play the lead character, but like many Hollywood projects, the film became stuck in development. Years passed, plans changed, and the original version of the movie eventually fell apart. More recently, actor Simu Liu has expressed interest in reviving the project and bringing Sleeping Dogs to the big screen. Some games are remembered because they changed the industry. Others are remembered because they almost did. Sleeping Dogs belongs firmly in that second category. A game that quietly built admiration, just a little too late to secure its future, and maybe that's why people still recommend it today, not as a forgotten game, but as a reminder of how timing can shape the legacy of something that deserved more. And who knows, if a movie of this game was ever made and it was a success, who knows, maybe some developer might want to make a Sleeping Dogs 2 when they realize that there is demand for this world, for this type of game. I mean, Sleeping Dogs 2, I'd be all over it, to be honest. What about you guys? What do you reckon about Sleeping Dogs? Would you love to see a Sleeping Dogs 2? Or is Sleeping Dogs 1 enough and you're just happy with it? Or were you not a fan of the game? Please do let me know in the comments. And thank you guys for joining. I will see you again in the next video.